Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on today for this very special Zoom class. Thank you to everyone that's taken their time out of the day to tune in live. Everyone that's watching it, hashtag replay. Stick around. We have a fun class for today. Please, as we go along, there is that chat box. You can please participate there. So if you have questions, first and foremost, definitely want to make sure that we're getting your questions answered. Feel free to say hi. Feel free to leave some comments, questions. We'll get to that for sure. So that's very important. Make sure you click to everyone so everyone can see it. And we're going to cruise along for this awesome class, which is 12 days of card making that Michaels has been doing. But before we get into that, my lesson for those that have never followed me on any of my classes, maybe you have. You know, my very first lesson is how to properly pronounce Siser. S-I-S-E-R. So it's Siser. All right. Congratulations, everyone. That's lesson number 1. So go tell your friends. It's not Siser, sisters, all the other things. So yes, we are going to be doing card making with a twist to it because us at Siser North America, we only manufacture those heat transfer vinyls you see at Michaels. So we actually don't do anything with cardstock or anything in that regard. But what I love to do is come out with out-of-the-box ideas where it does stuff against the grain for what we typically do for our heat transfer vinyls. So again, as I'm going along, I don't want to confuse anybody. Please, if you have any questions, make sure you ask them, and then we'll get those answered as soon as we can. So everything I'm showing you today is available at Michaels stores. I'm going to show you a wide variety of Siser heat transfer vinyls that I'm going to be applying to regular cards, blank cards that you can get at Michaels with envelopes in their Recollections brand or that type of card. So they're just blank cards. I'm going to be heat applying various heat transfer vinyls to make these one of a kind. Because again, we like to do stuff that is extremely different, unique, and out of the box for our heat transfer vinyls. Now, our heat transfer vinyls are manufactured for textiles. So they're manufactured to be heat applied onto apparel. So you're probably asking, why would you ever put it on something like a card? Because why not? It's awesome. It's totally different. It's unique. It's also a fun, crafty project that you can do with your entire family, your friends, the kids, the grandkids, anyone around can make their own unique card this season and give it to a loved one or someone close to them. So that's the fun of this. So some of the artwork, I'm going to be showing you these 3 cards. I'm going to cruise down the line with some of the one colors. So the first one I'm going to do here is our Siser Glitter. Now, if you've ever used our Siser Glitter, I know it's very hard to kind of communicate this through camera, but our glitter does have that rough surface to it, which is the alluring, glimmery side of the glitter that you see. I'm sure some of you may have used it before. So yes, this comes in a wide variety of colors. We stuck with the standard red, cut it so that we have one cavity, so to speak, for the front of it. So we're coating the whole outside of this card. And again, it has that glittery feel. It looks really sharp. And then we're going to do another one of a kind, mixing a couple Siser products. This is very difficult to show you on camera, but I actually do have one layer that's on the card right now. It's going to be very difficult to see it. It's actually a clear sparkle. So it's called Sparkle Heat Transfer Vinyl that is on it. Yeah, it's going to be impossible to see it. But I got to tell you, it adds a wonderful texture to it. It really does make the card pop. Then I'm going to be adding StripFlock Pro, which is a velvety, very kind of embossed sort of effect to the heat transfer vinyl. And then, of course, our holographic heat transfer vinyl that already has that awesome pearlescent, flashy finish that worked for the bulbs. And then the last is I'm going to use EasyWeed Electric. So on this one, we just use standard EasyWeed, which you could just buy a green card if you wanted to. We wanted to have fun with it. But I'm going to use EasyWeed Electric because EasyWeed Electric has another flashy finish to it. So I'm gonna make that outside pop. And then this particular design we used on here, I do also wanna plug that we used it from one of our art book clip art packs that are available at Michael's. And we have 3 different kinds, and they're just these USBs full of SVGs. So they're pre-made art files, which this came in handy for this particular one because this particular clip art book pack is holidays. So again, it's very difficult to see it from here, but if you open up the art book pack, you see all the clip art that is already readily available on just this one thumb drive. So again, these are already pre-made artwork. This is holidays, so this covers obviously the entire year. There's some great ones for the holidays coming up. Obviously, if you want to get ready for ones in 2022, got those ready. And then we have ones for sports and we have ones for special occasions. All have great artwork if you're not as art savvy on doing your own style. So, any questions so far? Cool. Okay.
Good.
All right, I am going to be using the Siser Craft Heat Press, another piece of machinery at Michael's. I'm just going to do it because I am even though we're doing cardstock, but I'm still all about making sure I have even flat pressure. Now, if you have a home iron, if you have an easy press, you can 100% do this project, anything we're showing you today. I just like the fact that I can regulate my pressure and dial it all in and press it all at once underneath my heat press. So cardstock is pretty basic. That's how it comes. These are already cards that are blank. If you're doing your own cards, it's very important to make sure you size exactly to the cut file you're going to be cutting on which heat transfer vinyl you're going to be using. You can most certainly use scissors and obviously size it up and hand cut the shape of it if you just want to do an outside coating to it. Now, if you're trying to do intricate cuts like what we're going to be doing, obviously you're going to be using a vinyl cutter of some sort. So you're still going to cut your designs in reverse on your Siser heat transfer vinyl. Make sure you have all that dialed in correctly. I'm just going to do some weeding just to kind of show you the simplicity of this. So glitter, if you never use it, again, it does come on a sticky carrier sheet. This does help for any intricate cuts. You can cut Siser HTV pretty detailed. Just make sure you do some test cuts on your vinyl cutter. Make sure you're dialing that in as close to the carrier sheet as you can get. Now, another thing I'm going to be showing you in this, and I would never explain this if I was pressing on a garment. I'm going to be showing you examples of stuff that you might not necessarily layer directly on top of one another if you're applying on textiles. This is very important. Since we're applying on something that you aren't going to be washing, like a card, I hope you're not washing your cards, but if you do, 50-50. Now, for the majority of those that aren't washing their cards, you can layer any Siser heat transfer vinyls on top of one another. All of this is entirely experimental. So again, the reason why we say it might not be layerable if you called us and you said it was going on a shirt is because if you wash it, it might fall off. That's the concern. But since this is going on something that isn't going to be washed, we can layer whatever we want on top of one another. So all bets are off. Again, entirely experimental. Have fun with it, however you want to do it. Okay.
We got a great question in the chat.
Question?
Lana wants to know, is that the same size as the card?
Absolutely. Yep. So as you saw, I did cut this little excess off of whatever I had for my piece of glitter. And then obviously this is the inside of where the card's going to be. So this negative space will be the color of your card if that's how you want it to pop. So really all you have to do is get whatever card you're going to be using. Again, these are already cards available, already folded and everything at Michael's. But if you're doing your own, make sure you measure the size of it. So it's cut to the exact size of this card stock. And all I'm going to do is just lay it on top. If you have a little bit of an overflow, that's all right too. You can always go back and use some scissors or an X-Acto knife, or something along that line to line it up. Oh, we're over here. So as you see, I just kind of like lined it up to make sure that it was exactly where it needs to be, which it looks all good. Now I'm just going to lay it on my heat press. Before I do that, I want to also make sure my pressure, although this is only going on cardstock, I do want to make sure my pressure is set correctly. So what I'm going to do is just close this, make sure it snaps. My pressure is pretty light, so right now I'm turning it clockwise to increase it. Okay. So again, since we're going on cardstock, we don't need to necessarily follow the exact temperatures we recommend for our heat transfer vinyls or the exact time. I am set to 280 degrees, which is very low if you were heat applying onto garments with these heat transfer vinyls. But again, we're going on card. It doesn't have to be exactly what we tell everyone. So just experiment with what works best. Cardstock responds a little bit differently to heat, so you still want to make sure you test it. So I have my pressure set nicely. I'm just going to, honestly, so if this was going onto a garment, I would be pressing this for about 10 to 15 seconds. Since it's going on a cardstock, I'm going to only press this for a few seconds. So let's give it about four or 5 seconds. I don't know. Let's test it out. All right, we want 5 seconds. We're going to give it a hot peel. That's all we're looking for. That's it. See that? Now I got the whole outside of my card is ready to go. Already ready to be folded. All you have to do is fill in the inside. If you wanted to add something else to the inside, you can of course do both sides to it. We just wanted to show you something real quick. Obviously plug in the Siser S with one color of the glitter heat transfer vinyl. What do you guys think? Cool?
Was that parchment paper that?
Oh yeah. So, sorry. I use parchment paper as my cover sheet for my heat press. Obviously, if you're using a home iron or an easy press for this project, you still want to use a cover sheet in between. It's just going to protect your platen for both the home iron and your heat press. Great question. Anything else? Moving on? All right, awesome. Let's go on to this one. So again, I know it's difficult to see it, but I am going to put a clear or a layer of our clear Sparkle HTV. Now our Sparkle HTV versus glitter is still a glittery product, but it's a smooth heat transfer vinyl. So it's a lot thinner. The glitter flakes are embedded inside the product, and even on textiles, it is a layerable product. Regular glitter heat transfer vinyl, not recommended to have anything layered on top of it. Sparkle heat transfer vinyl, you can layer on top of it all day. So it's a very thin, sparkly product. And we offer it in a clear option, which doesn't help when the card is white. So, and we're on camera. But in person, I got to tell you, it looks great. What do you say, Trev?
Oh, yeah. It looks really good. We got a great question. So can you do this with just an iron?
Yeah. Yep. Like I mentioned before, if you have an iron, if you have an easy press, just a glorified iron, you can use that. Just still make sure you're at a good temperature and make sure you're using some kind of cover sheet and apply some pressure. I'm using the Siser Craft heat press just to kind of get this rolling. As you can see, fast applications, easy. I can regulate my pressure so I don't need to worry about really cranking it down. Now, this is an example. This is the clear Sparkle, which is very, very difficult to see on camera. I get it. But it is kind of a milky heat transfer vinyl. But whatever you're applying it on, so if I put it on a blue shirt, as you can see, it's transparent, but it has the glittery elements inside the heat transfer vinyl. So the card is going to have that glossy finish before we layer it with the other heat transfer vinyls and make it pop. So just like the last one, we have the piece of the clear Sparkle cut to the same size as the cardstock. I'm only going to tack this down for a second. I can peel hot with the Sparkle. I know you can't see anything, but as you can tell, it came off the carrier sheet. It's officially on the cardstock. Maybe we can get a side-by-side just to see the finish. Now, this is a cardstock that doesn't have anything on it. Yeah, it's difficult to tell, but I promise you it is sweet. This is the one that has the clear on it now. So we have our base down. Now I'm going to layer the other products directly on top of it. So again, I'm using Siser StripFlock Pro for the ribbon of the lights. Now, if you've never used StripFlock Pro, again, it is a suede-like heat transfer vinyl that does have some dimension to it. So I use it quite a bit, and I say this all the time, to give the faux embroidery look. I know that kind of makes real embroiderers not so happy, but it does have that satin stitch look if you add it to things. It is also a product that you can layer on top of, weirdly enough. But a big effect of this is really the feel of it.
Someone wants to know, I think when you apply it to the card itself, will it not work? Will the material not work?
No. So the low, that's a great question. The low heat application in the few seconds I'm tacking it down is not manipulating the heat transfer vinyl at all. So that is a good question, but yeah, no worries on that. Okay, just want to make sure I have that side laid out. Now I'm going to lay the StripFlock directly on top of the Sparkle. And just like before, I'm going to tack this down for a couple seconds. And if you have some lifting, if something lifts off, not a big deal. All you have to go back and is press it a couple more seconds. See, I have that one side's not staying down, so I might have to just press it a little bit longer. No big deal. I'm going to cover this back up and press it for a few more seconds. You don't have to worry about anything shrinking. I know some people have probably used heat transfer vinyl and layered multiple colors and had to worry about the garment shrinking to where when you find your registration at the top, it doesn't line up exactly. This isn't going to be a concern because you don't need to worry about the cardstock shrinking. So that's what's happening with your garments, is that is shrinking down, causing the heat transfer vinyl to take its shape and shrink down. Cardstock, you don't have to worry about it. All right, so I'm going to be using Siser Rainbow Holographic Heat Transfer Vinyl. I wanted to show you, this is how the holographic already looks. Now, this is an example that we already did with all the Rainbow Holographic. Even though it does look like some of the colors are just a solid red or a solid blue, it's actually just how it ended up being cut on the Rainbow Holographic. So this is up to you if you did want to use this, that you have two options to do it. We're going to do what I'm doing here, which is one sheet that's cut to fit directly onto my card here, or you could cut it in a row like this and individually cut these and place them where you want to place them. That's just one option that you can do. It's up to how you want to do it. We wanted to showcase this Rainbow Holographic because it, as you can tell, it already has every color we want to use, and it also is very flashy as a product in itself. It's just very important when you set up holographic on your vinyl cutter that you do your test cuts, because holographic can be one of the trickier heat transfer vinyls to cut because holographic does have layers to it. Now, this technically is my cavity, so I would discard this, but we're all crafters here. You could certainly save this and cut other extra parts out of this. If you have any kind of the die punches or anything like that, you can still utilize your scrap pieces. So you might not need to throw that out. Hang on to it. And then I have just really tiny cuts on this, just to kind of showcase the intricacy of what you can get with cutting on some of these heat transfer vinyls is pretty impressive. Is anyone doing any cards for the holidays? Let's get some questions going.
Someone wants to know, do you need to wait before moving on, or does it need to cool?
Great.
I think they mean
When
yeah, after pressing.
After
that's
pressing?
when you're layering, yeah, to get ready
That's
to cool.
no, absolutely not. So if you wanted to do all your weeding first, instead of what I'm doing here, where it's one after another, you could have everything weeded and set to go, and then just press one thing after another. I'll do that for the next one. I just wanted to show you the 3 different product types I'm using here. Super thin with the Sparkle heat transfer vinyl, a little bit thicker, again, with a nice velvety suede feel to the finish of the StripFlock Pro. And then, of course, to add some light and flash to that with the holographic. So, but yeah, if you were crunched for time, or if you were just knocking these out one after another, you could absolutely do all of them back to back, all your layers. So this was cut again to just kind of fit as best as I can get it onto the card, to where I'm going to do one press, instead of, if I wanted to particularly cut out each individual bulb. You could make each bulb a different product. You could go as crazy as you want. This is just to show you an example. Okay. Cover that up. I'm going to press this for about 5 seconds, see what happens with the holographic. Holographic is typically a cold peel if you're working with regular textiles. But again, since this isn't normal, it became a hot peel. So there you go. All right, that's a second card. How about that? You still have plenty of room to do more decoration if you want to. I'm even closed right on that seam with the holographic, goes right over the seam. It still closes great. You can absolutely decorate the inside if you want to. Any questions on this one? All right, cool. We're cruising. Now, last card I'm going to be doing is, this is the one I was mentioning, is available on the clip art book pack, at least for this part. I'm going to be combining 1, 2, 3 different Siser products on this one. So again, I'm going to be using EasyWeed Electric. We did use regular EasyWeed on this. The bulbs are actually more sparkle. So I have 1, 2, 3 different sparkle colors layered as the bulbs, and then the hooks of the bulbs are, or the string I should say, is the Siser Metal heat transfer vinyl. So it's a very thin metallic looking heat transfer vinyl that you can use. Again, is not typically one that we recommend layering on top of, but for the purpose of the card, we're going to layer it. All right. So I have my EasyWeed Electric. We have regular EasyWeed green and then EasyWeed Electric green, which once it's applied with the carry sheet off, it does pop a lot more. So okay. I'm going to tack this down for a few seconds. Feel hot. And now you can see why I picked that. Has definitely more of a pearlescent sheen than, where did that other card go? Oh, right here. Then to show you kind of that. So it depends on what you're going for. If you want a flat color, EasyWeed is a fantastic way to go. If you want to add some of that dimension, this is the EasyWeed Electric. All right. So I have, no, I'm sorry. I have 4 layers I'm going to do. Three of which are the Sparkle heat transfer vinyl. And then I have the metal, which is a very unique heat transfer vinyl. Just to show you, I just want to make sure I'm doing these layers correctly, because the way we have these cut are kind of layered in a particular way so they line up correct. All right. So I'm going to start by just getting a gauge of where the metal is going to go. Then I believe I have to lay the red down first.
Would acrylic paint be used over these?
Acrylic paint?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you really don't have any limitations as to what you can put on top of it.
Someone is saying that their EasyWeeder electric looks wrinkled after applying cardstock. Is there any way to sort of mitigate that?
That is going to be solely based on your pressure. So you want to make sure that when you're pressing it, I don't know if you're using a home iron or if you're using a heat press, but you want to make sure, as you saw right here, I mean, this is as flat as it can be. Pressure is key. Even pressure is very, very important. Another thing to consider is, what is the thickness of your cardstock? If your cardstock is overly thin, then the heat may cause it to warp a little bit. But if more of a rigid cardstock, a thicker cardstock, you shouldn't run into too many problems. You might also want to check the heat, because maybe your heat was too high and maybe you have to dial it back a little bit. There's a couple things to kind of test out, but I would definitely start with making sure your pressure is good. All right. So I'm tacking down the first layer of the Siser Sparkle red, tacking that for 1 second. Now again, I have to make sure that I have all my lining up as good, as accurate as I can get it. All right, so I'm laying my next color of the Siser Sparkle directly on that first layer. I'm going to tack that down for a second. Peel hot. Okay.
Can you show us on the camera what you have so far?
Absolutely. So that's 2 colors. I have the gold, well, 3 colors technically. I have the EasyWeeder electric, and then 2 colors of the Sparkle heat transfer vinyl. And as you can really see it pop there, right? So this is a smooth heat transfer vinyl, super thin, heat application very low, layerable. And again, if you don't like that feel of the normal glitter that might have that has that rough surface, the glitter flake is embedded inside the product.
And is this the same pressure as previous to?
Yep. If you've been on this whole time, I haven't adjusted any of the pressure. I haven't adjusted temperature. For this whole project so far, I've only been set to 280 degrees Fahrenheit on my heat press, and my pressure is at a good medium to firm pressure. So this is my 3rd color of Sparkle that I'm going to tack down and peel hot. So that was just another added extra little different color that I'm adding over here. Now I have my 4th color. Okay. And the thing about the Sparkle as well, what's great is it does have a sticky carrier. So the sticky carrier, that pressure sensitive carrier, does allow it to line up and stick without anything shifting. that weeder. Hot peel. Okay, so my last and final layer is the Siser Metal Gold. Different product. Again, this is a metallic heat transfer vinyl, super thin. And this is another one that we recommend a cold peel with, but let's see what it's like after a couple seconds. Maybe we can get a hot peel. So I'm going to do 5 seconds on that. Yeah, it might be a cold peel. And there you have it. Another flashy card, 3 different cards, real quick, easy to bend. As you see, the EasyWeeder electric is flush, flat to the card. I'm still able to close my card perfectly. Now, again, if you want to add something into the center of it, you have an opportunity to really showcase that. Use this real estate on any of these. 3 different cards. Which one is your favorite? Set it up, Trev. Let's get a poll going. Which one is your favorite? So regular glitter, no, I'm sorry. Regular glitter, EasyWeeder electric, sparkle and metal, and StripFlock Pro, holographic, and sparkle clear. What do we got coming in?
They love the lights. Yeah.
The lights. All right, look at the lights for the win. Well, that just shows what holographic does, because you can really see that on camera. What this holographic heat transfer vinyl already does is make that garment pop, but now you're talking about cards. And this is only the beginning, because if this works for card stocks, there's all sorts of things you're going to be able to decorate with these heat transfer vinyls. But we're in card making season. So I definitely wanted to come on, hopefully get you guys inspired, get you excited for a craft that you can start working on now. I know if you're watching this live, you're like, we got Thanksgiving around the corner. Why are you already on Christmas? Because we want to make sure you're ready to go for some ideas in the near future. Some fun things you could do on the Thanksgiving holiday as well to get started, to bring in the whole family, do some crafts together, have some fun. Does anyone have any questions before we close up? I think I see some coming in.
Can you do it on wooden ornaments?
Yes. Well, listen, guys, the rule of thumb on this with heat transfer vinyl and any substrate, I don't want you to ruin anything you're using. I don't want you to waste any of the material you're using. I don't want you to have a headache with Siser products, and I don't want you to hate me. But I want you to have fun and experiment. My rule of thumb is test whatever substrate you're going to be applying on under the heat of the heat press. If that can withstand the heat of your home iron, easy press, or heat press, then 99% of the time you can apply heat transfer vinyl onto it. So I definitely want you to test it first with it, just a quick little test. If it starts being too abrasive or it starts leaving blemishes, then give up on it, sorry. But we do have a bunch of great projects we've done in the past. I've done for Michael's, talking about pressing on wood plaques. We've done a ton of great stuff on wood surfaces with heat transfer vinyl. Remember, for those that are still new, this is heat transfer vinyl, heat application. It's not decal vinyl. We have our Easy PSV line, which is pressure sensitive vinyl, which is also available, but it doesn't add the same dimension as heat transfer vinyl can to certain projects. And we definitely want to be unique, right? I mean, that's the best thing about gift giving and doing stuff, is making it one of a kind. So great question though. Try it, have fun with them. Any other questions? Which one was it? Are we settled on that?
I think it's lights, yeah.
The lights? Okay. Like I said, these art book, clip art book packs have so many already made artwork files on it. If you're not savvy with designing, if you're not sure where to go, these art book packs are a lifesaver. I've used them for a bunch of my projects in the past. They're great jump, and they're all, you can manipulate them. So you're not stuck to exactly how it looks like in these, the color schemes. You can do whatever you want. I do have one final part to the card making that I almost forgot. So I talked about Siser Sparkle, Siser Glitter, but Siser also has a product called Twinkle. Now, Twinkle is a great hybrid of glitter and sparkle. It is a smooth glitter product, but unlike sparkle, it stands apart with the way that the reflective element to this product is. Again, you have to see it in action. When light hits it, it does have reflective elements inside the Twinkle to really make the product pop. So what I'm going to do to kind of wrap this up, and since you guys picked the lights to be the winner, we'll send this one off. I don't know to who, but I'll send it to somebody. And what we did with the Twinkle is created a monogram as an extra stamp. So if you didn't want to lick this, we created a monogram with my initials, which I'm glad we got right, because apparently you have to do monograms a specific way. So what we're going to do is we're going to seal it with the Twinkle. This I have never done before. So this is a first for everything. For me, for you, let's do it. We're going to stamp that for a few seconds. And peel hot. Now check that out. I mean, how cool is that? You can even personalize your own stamp with some Twinkle heat transfer vinyl that I just added to finish up our next Christmas letter.
Kind of like a wax seal.
Exactly. It's like a modern spin to a wax seal. Exactly. And again, with the Twinkle, I know, and it's the most frustrating thing about these Zoom classes is that you don't get the full effect of what these heat transfer vinyls get to bring to you, because I know you're probably like, this guy needs to wrap it up. I need to go try it out. But you need to see it in person. You really do need to mess with these. They are uniquely different. I have a bunch of content on our YouTube channel. If you go over to Siser North America on YouTube, we have a ton of content showing you how each one of our products is used, give you some inspiration for stuff. So we definitely are here to help. Again, everything I'm talking about today, everything I'm showing you is available at Michael's stores. So you can get your hands on some and try it out. I definitely want to see what you're doing with it. So as mentioned in the beginning, please make sure if you post it on social media, use the hashtag Siser, we learned it, S-I-S-E-R, N-A, North America, N-A, and make it with Michael's. So 2 separate hashtags. I want to see what you guys are doing with this. Check it out today. I hope this was fun. I hope you guys had some inspiration on this. Again, Siser doesn't do anything with cards, so this was extremely out of the box. I had a blast. I'm glad it came out all together. Yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. We have another class next week. If you're going to be on here, more stuff. Actually, it'll be more Thanksgiving oriented. So if you get to sign up for it, it will be Friday, November 19th. Make sure if you're on that, tune back in. We have much more to show you. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you soon.